Welcome, everyone, to Eternal Life Plan. I'm your host, Christine Harrington, and we're doing a rare live stream on Saturday to accommodate our guests' schedule. Now, since I have reported on Catholic nonprofits in the past, I've received a bunch of questions from viewers that, frankly, I couldn't really answer. So I gathered all those questions up, and I'm going to be presenting them to our guest because she's been in the nonprofit fundraising industry for quite a while. She's a fundraiser professional, and I'm so excited and happy to introduce you to Kristy Armas. Hi, Kristy.
Hi there, Christine.
Now, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm in Southern California, and you would think it'd be super sunny right now, but it's actually pretty super overcast.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think it's going to rain. But then again, we have a lot of marine layer that comes in. So that's what I'm dealing with right now.
Do you get a lot of humidity there?
Somewhat. It has been kind of humid, and I thought that was really strange. But yeah, we do get some humidity.
We're having one of those heat waves and humidity waves this weekend here in Indiana. So I'd rather you get that than me.
Thanks.
I know. Isn't that generous of me?
Yes, Christine, very generous. It doesn't do great for my hair, but it does great for my skin.
I know. All right, Kristy. I appreciate you coming on and helping us understand the nonprofit world. Now, would you give the audience a little bit of background of how did you become a nonprofit fundraiser, and what does that mean?
That's one of my favorite questions. Actually, I think it's one of my favorite because I always say no one grows up saying, I want to be a fundraiser when I grow up. It's one of those professions you kind of fall into, which is kind of what happened to me. So a little bit about my background. I actually come from the for-profit world. So, I've been in different industries, the travel industry, voice over IP, consulting, just different things, right? And so it came to a point where I decided that I wanted to try something different. And I had always heard about this thing called nonprofit. And I said, wow, what is that? I want to investigate that a little bit more. And then I found out that there are some very good things about nonprofit because there are some altruistic aspects of it where they want to make the world a better place to live. And so definitely that's always been something in my heart. I've always been a caring person. I care about a lot of things, and generosity is one of them. So I started looking into, more and more about what a nonprofit is. And I said, okay, well, let me see if I can enter this space. And sure enough, I did. So one of my first nonprofits, what I ended up doing there was I was working in the public affairs and communications department because, this nonprofit required a department like that. And so I was really involved in all the aspects of, finding out what was going on with this particular initiative, shall we say, about what this nonprofit actually did. So I was very involved with that, and there was events included in on all of that. And then I wanted to find out more about what fundraising was, because this particular organization didn't have a fundraising department because it was being funded primarily through a statewide. So it was money from the state that was handed down to another nonprofit in the city of Los Angeles, and then it was, kind of given to us from them. So it was a different pipeline of money.
Was it a grant, Kristy?
Okay, so this was a tax that came from cigarettes.
Oh, okay.
So it was one of those initiatives that was started by a Hollywood star. he's still alive, I think. So anyway, so that money, that there was a lot of money that was created for that. And then so another California organization kind of took over that to manage it and then funneled it down to the different cities, which ours was one of them. So that's the reason why they didn't have a fundraising department there. But I think in thinking back, that was a little bit like short-sighted, because at some point that money was going to end. So they should have probably started a fundraising department or something like that, so that they could plan for their future and actually they can start securing more money. But anyway, I left that organization to another organization that actually did have fundraising. And there I learned a lot about planned giving and major gifts and annual giving and events and industry fundraising. I mean, there was just so much to learn. It's a big subject. So I learned about that, but I wasn't actually the fundraiser in that organization. But it was kind of a great step for me to step into the actual frontline fundraising world. And so my next step with that was actually being the fundraising professional, frontline fundraising professional. So I started doing major gifts, and and this particular organization was in the service industry, to help, helping the homeless and whatnot. So pretty much from that point on is where I stepped into the frontline fundraising, and I really haven't looked back since. It's a very interesting profession because you get to meet so many people. Specifically, I deal with major gifts. And well, there's a combination of middle donors and major gifts, and I'll explain a little bit in a second about what that means. So the major gift role is interesting because you get to meet so many different people and their walks of life and why they're interested in an organization and how they came to know that organization is always very fascinating to me. So that's, and then from there you start cultivating the donor relationship to build something very, very strong, a strong bond with that donor. And from there you get to build on, okay, well, what is this interest that they have and why would they want to continue giving to this organization, and how can I build that relationship stronger so that they can continue supporting at more, and the goal is hopefully at higher levels than they have been giving. So that's kind of the the small picture of what a major donor is. And then the middle donors are pretty much your annual giving donors. Those are the folks that give like $10, $20, $100, $200 a month. And that's pretty much, they are very important to an organization because they really keep that organization going.
It's been my experience, Kristy, in the past when I've been on the board of nonprofits and some of the secular nonprofits that I have personally worked with, without fail, none of them really had a fundraising plan.
Oh.
And I know. And I was surprised. This one secular nonprofit that I was worked with for over 3 years, their fundraising was, I don't want to say the word pitiful. Well, it was pitiful. And instead of trying to find major donors and putting their eggs, many of their eggs in that basket, they instead pivoted to grants. Mm-hmm. And of course, when Trump took over in 2025, that went away until they could go in and research what grants were going to be permitted and what was wasting taxpayer money. So they found themselves in a real bad situation because they didn't encourage the fundraising part. They had one person fundraising who had never fundraised before. So made it pretty difficult on them. Is that something that you see in the nonprofits?
Well, yes, it can happen. Usually you see that kind of thing, usually in like smaller organizations
Yes.
where everybody wears different hats. And I mean, I get it. That is, they have to cut costs at some point because they want to keep this organization going, especially if their mission, it's a valid mission, and they want to put as much money into the program than spending on the staff. I get it. But this is one of those things, and you will appreciate this as a sales professional. Sales is your lifeblood of the organization.
Yes,
No
it
matter
is
what.
for any business.
And you can kind of look at a fundraiser in the same manner. And there are definitely some very big differences between a sales professional like yourself and a fundraising professional like myself. But a lot of the same qualities in terms of why we exist is very true in a for-profit organization than it is in a nonprofit organization. And at the same time, I also understand that you as let me turn this around. As an organization, they also do have to pay their staff well, the fundraising professionals, or that department in general, or actually everyone in the organization, because they have to be able to keep the employees. One thing that I found in nonprofit world is people are always changing, especially in this fundraising role. They're always leaving. They're always changing, fundraising people. And that's a real discredit to the organization and the donors, because the donors don't even get to know who they're dealing with, really, because by the time they kind of know somebody, then they're already gone. Then somebody else is new, then they have to start all over again. And
I've heard that, Kristy.
It's so true.
Why do they not want long-term fundraisers that you're the one that's developing the relationship?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a combination. I think really they find people, well, there's two major things, I would say, and not in any particular order. Either the organization doesn't pay well, and then they move on to something that does pay very well, and then there goes that relationship. And then the other aspect is perhaps the person wants to move on and they don't want to do this anymore. That's also very possible. It is a very, very hard job. I will say that. There are some very tough aspects of this job, but it's also very rewarding when you do make those connections and you are able to align the donor with the mission. So the things that we look at is linkage, interest, and ability. That's what I look at when I'm looking at a major donor. What's their linkage to the organization? What's their interest to the organization? And what is their ability to actually make a transformational gift?
Well, let me ask you this, and then we'll get to the questions that were submitted to me, okay? How much power does a major gift donor have over the direction of a nonprofit that they're basically supporting?
Well, the fundraiser, the major gift officer, you were saying?
No, the donor.
Oh, the major gift donor. Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
The major gift donor. How much sway do they have towards the direction they want that nonprofit to go?
Tremendous, because they are the people that are going to be funding certain, initiatives that the organization is, asking for donations for. So we definitely want to keep the pipeline of major donors involved. We want that retention rate. It's very, very important, as are the annual giving donors as well. Mm-hmm. All of that matters. Every bit matters, but it's actually the major donors and the plan giving donors that really make a huge impact on the organization. So for those who don't understand what a planned gift is, it's basically an estate plan. It could be a bequest, it could be a charitable gift annuity. A lot of folks say, I'm single, I don't have any children, I never got married, or even if I did get married, I don't have any children, and where is all my wealth going to go? So they make a concession in their will or in estate plans and say, when I pass away, all of what I have is going to go to X organization. Or maybe they say, I want to make sure that X percentage goes to this organization. So these are just concessions that are made by the donor to an organization. And it's also very helpful if those that do make those kinds of concessions do share that information with the organization, because that way they're able to plan for their future. This is very important. And that's where the cultivation of what I do to that donor is so key. We want to make sure that they're continuously engaged, that we're engaging them, that we're sharing everything we're doing. Because if it's a revocable, plan, they can just say, what? No one's contacted me there for 5 years, 10 years. Why should I give them anything? They could move on to the next organization. So that's where our role is.
Okay. So one of the questions I got is, when you look at a nonprofit's public materials and Eternal Life Plan family, here's the thing: when you're looking up nonprofits on a nonprofit, what do I call it? Like I use ProPublica to look up nonprofits, Kristy. You've got to know exactly how they have filed with the IRS, what their name is. Okay. So I'll just give you an example of LifeSite News when I looked that one up. LifeSite News you just can't type in LifeSite News because it won't come up. Their actual tax filing name is LifeSite News space com, C-O-M, space Inc. So you have to have all that in there before you'll find it. On any of the nonprofits, you've got to know exactly how they filed it with the IRS. So when you look at a nonprofit's public materials, its website, annual report, or IRS Form 990, which is what I always look up, what's the first thing you check to gauge whether they're operating with integrity?
Okay, that's a very good question. So one of the first things you really want to check is the mission, the activities, and do the finances all line up? So you want to check for their mission statement across all aspects, their website, their financial statements, their annual reports, their social media. Is all of that consistent, and is it clear? Because you can't have one thing saying, maybe on their website, you can't have it saying one thing, but then when you look at the 990s, it's something completely different. So that's definitely one thing that you want to look for. The other thing, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of things, is you want to look into that 990. And by the way, you mentioned that one organization. Another couple of organizations you can look on the website is Charity Navigator and GuideStar. Those
GuideStar, yes. Mm-hmm. GuideStar and Charity Navigator.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, they usually do whatever the organization provides, they usually have it in there, like their 990s and whatnot. So that's definitely very important. You want to look at, are there any, if you're going to get into the nitty gritty of the 990, are there any large unexplained payments in there, especially given to insiders? That's very odd. You don't want that. And also look at the dependence of their funding. Are they just depending on one major source? That's also very troubling. If it's the federal government, well, we already know what happened, and where a lot of organizations are, with that. If it's one person, that's also very problematic, because what if that person goes away for whatever reason? Then what? So that's also something to look at. And if they don't actually have any financial documents, anything that we can look at that's been audited, that's also very, very suspicious. You definitely want to have that kind of information in there, or any vague or inflated claims of impact.
Do you know all of the Catholic media companies that I've looked at on their 990s, they have never had shown that they've had a financial audit.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's not good. Stay away from all that. You have to be very clear on what it is they're funding and why are they asking for this money.
Yeah. The other, is it a red flag? And I'm not going to name names, but one Catholic nonprofit, their CEO gets paid close to $1 million. And then there's the staff.
Then there's everybody else.
Yeah, that's always seemed odd to me,
Yes, that is very odd.
What is that ratio, do you think, is the sweet spot between, and I know this is generalization, Kristy, and every nonprofit is different, whether it's a small nonprofit or a large nonprofit. The secular nonprofit that I was referring to earlier, the CEO and the board chairman, the board chairman was being paid over $100,000, and he was a CEO of a sister organization already. And then the CEO was paying over almost $300,000, and yet there was no fundraising, and this was all based on grants.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can actually give you an actual percentage per se, but you want to look at the overall picture. How much money is actually being brought in? And everything on the 990, I believe it's everyone, if I'm not mistaken, everyone who makes over 100,000 is listed on the 990. You also want to look at that. As I mentioned earlier today, it's really never a good situation when, you have someone at the very top making millions, and then everybody else is making, pennies. That's not good, because again, we're going to go back to that high turnover ratio. That's not good at all for the organization. So there has to be a balance, right? You kind of have to look at the overall picture. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the CEO really is worth $1 million, but are they bringing in way over? I believe it's the kind of, I think I believe the ratio is you have to be bringing in 5 times your actual salary. And that goes for, the CEO, the fundraisers. I believe that's what the ratio is.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's all relative, right? If this person is bringing in $10 million,
right,
for example, exactly, and they're making $1 million, well, gosh, maybe they are worth it. And maybe they're getting underpaid, to be honest with you. But then, what is everybody else getting? But there's kind of a balance there. The fundraisers also better be bringing in that kind of money too. I mean, the ratio type of money.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. How tied is the CEO? Let's say the CEO that's making $1 million. Okay. We have to assume correctly that he's bringing in relationships, or she's bringing in relationships that are contributing to the donations. So I guess my question is, Kristy, how tied is the CEO to actual fundraising?
Pretty important.
Okay.
Pretty important because obviously the CEO is the face of the organization, and hopefully that CEO has enough gravitas where they're able to attract and bring, their COIs, or also known as, your sphere of influence, pretty much. Your sphere of influence into the fold of the organization. And at that level, I mean, they should be operating pretty high and, meeting people and bringing people into the fold. And with that being said, they should be fundraising as well. Of course, that's not their only job because they have an organization to run, but it is pretty important. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And everyone, if you have questions, just drop them in the comments and we'll take your questions as well. Okay. So you may have already answered this, Kristy. What are some signs that a nonprofit's mission statement is more window dressing than reality?
Well, I would definitely say, yeah, I kind of did answer that already. Look out for all this lofty jargon language. It's so vague that there's nothing you could really hold on to. Look for things that are vague and not really saying much. I like to call those word salads. You're saying a lot, but you're not saying anything.
Right. Right.
And so there also another thing is, make sure that there's a clear connection between what they're saying to what the actual programs are. You can't be promoting one thing but actually doing another. That would be highly duplicitous. Inconsistencies in messages across platforms. They're saying one thing on their website, they're saying another on the 990, and then when they have their annual report come out, they're saying something else. Look out for if the spending doesn't actually match the mission. That's another thing to look out for. And that they're not actually sharing any kind of measurable results. This is a very there's a lot of metrics involved in all of this. So, make sure that they're actually making an impact and that they're sharing what that impact is in numbers, not just saying, "Oh, look, we help these wonderful people," but not saying how and what the outcome was. Also, look out for mission drift. Over the years, maybe the organization's mission has changed, but they haven't updated it on their website or any of their other documents. That could happen too.
Yeah, that happens a lot in the pro-life movement.
Well, sometimes, they change their mission because they're chasing money. But
I know.
but they, it has to be consistent. That's very important. Again, I've already said, look out for the buzzwords, the buzzword overload. And, if there's no strategic plan or performance metrics tied to what they're saying, that's another thing to look up for.
Okay. How can a donor tell if a nonprofit is spending more on fundraising and overhead than on the actual cause itself?
Well, here we go again. You want to go back and look. All that information you can kind of gather in the 990. You want to look at what they're spending on. There's an actual formula for that. You want to look at what the total expenses are, and the total expenses and what pardon me. Sorry. I am I'm a little bit rattled here. The admin expense ratio. That's what I'm trying to think of. It's called the admin expense ratio.
Okay.
So you want to look at everything they're doing. Look at the program services expenses divided by the total expenses and then multiply that by 100. So that kind of gives you a proportion of what the program expense expense ratio is. And so there's a lot of things that you could find in that 990, just by looking at what they're saying, where their spending is going, who all is getting paid what. And the other thing you can also find on there is if they have any kind of consulting services that they're actually paying for. There's a whole bunch of information that's on there that you can kind of look at.
I think the 990s are pretty vague, to be honest with you, Kristy. All of them that I've looked for, they just plug in a number and there's no explanation about anything, and I think that's real problematic. I think there needs to be more accountability. That's my opinion. There needs to be more accountability on those 990s because it's so vague.
It can be.
They don't give any details.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of information that you can pull out of there.
I agree.
If you want to, do deeper dives, you can certainly do some investigation. And then this kind of also ties into something else that's kind of important. If a person really wants to find out, all these things that we've just talked about, and if the organization is local, one of the best things you can do is actually start volunteering at that organization to really see what is happening and how things are actually operating. You learn a lot by volunteering.
Boy,
and
don't you know it?
So, that's really important. That's what I really tell people. And sometimes donors actually kind of test the system, so to speak. They actually do go volunteer. They don't say a word, but they watch everything you do, everything that happens, and they're taking notes, even if it's mental notes, but they're taking notes. Another way they do it too is they send in a small donation and they want to see how you treat them, what you're doing with that donation. So there's a lot of things that
you can do to test them.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Send in a small donation and see how they treat you. That's a good point. Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. How can donors verify that their contributions are creating measurable impact rather than just funding marketing campaigns?
Well, it's again, you want to look for specifics in, measurable outcomes. Look at the annual report. Look at, actually look at the program pages and see what is output versus outcome.
Wait a minute. Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
The annual report. All right. Is that something you have to ask for, or do nonprofits automatically give that to you?
Well, they should automatically send it to you. But if for whatever reason you don't, all you have to do is pick up the phone, and assuming they have one, they should be able to send it to you right away with no problems.
Yeah, I agree. They should automatically send it out to you.
Yeah, especially if you've been a funder.
Yeah. It's been my experience that doesn't happen. You have to ask for it.
And a lot of them, what they do is they put it on their website too.
That's a good point. Yes.
So maybe, it does cost money to send those out. So, in certain cases, maybe you want to send those out to major donors.
Well, but digitally, they could just, send it to you in an email.
They could, but okay, so that's something that you need to know about too. Touch points. I'm sure you have them in sales as a sales professional. That is a touch point for me to write a very personalized note to a major donor and say, share with them the special place in my heart that this particular donor has for all that they've done, and to see their transformational giving and what they've done to this organization. That's a touch point for me. So it would behoove me to want to write a personal note and include it in that annual report and send it out.
Even if you're just one of these $20 a month donors, that's $240 a year.
Mhm.
All right, you're not going to lose your house over that. But still, I've always wondered why there isn't more transparency, I think is the word that I'm looking for, about where your money is going. And maybe, Kristy, I've just donated to lousy nonprofits.
I was just going to say, I actually was just going to say that. I think that is correct. If this organization is on the up and up and they're doing things right, there is no problem sharing any of that information. It's public information.
Yeah.
And so it should be out there for you to see very easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to, I know you only have an hour, and we're 40 minutes in. And if any of you have questions, just pop them in the comments while we've got Kristy here. Okay. I think you've touched on this question. When a nonprofit refuses to share certain data reports, how should a donor interpret that silence? Not a good nonprofit. So let me ask the one before that. What patterns in leadership turnover, board membership, or salary should make donors pause before giving? And let me add to that question. Should board members, I've seen this happen in nonprofits too, where the founder stacks the board member with nothing. Let me start over. The founder stacks the board with all yes people. And some are employees. I have always felt like that a board should be comprised of mostly business people, not your best friend, not an employee that aligns with you. And founders get into this mindset, Kristy, and I know you know this, that they founded the nonprofit, therefore the nonprofit is theirs.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I know that one. Yes, that is very true. Well, to answer your question, let's start with the very top. If senior leadership, such as the CEO or president and CEO, if there's a large turnover, like very quickly, like within a year or two, not probably a good sign.
Okay.
Yeah, there shouldn't be that kind of turnover unless there's something seriously wrong. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a health issue. That's a different story.
Yeah,
That's something
right.
But if it's a continual thing where like every other year or every couple years they have a change in leadership that big, that's pretty troublesome. Also, departures from other senior leadership members, particularly in finance or fundraising, that's also kind of a wonder what happened there. The other thing is, like you mentioned, you definitely don't want to have a lot of insiders on that board. Just to be very clear, the board's main sole purpose of existence is to ensure that the health of that organization and that it's being run appropriately and correctly. The board's role really isn't to be in the day-to-day activities. That's not what they're there for. They're there to provide guidance at the appropriate time. And yes, do they get involved? Sometimes they get involved in fundraising because, for an example, say their best friend is funding, giving money to the organization, but we as fundraisers find out that they have the means to do more. And there's an initiative that we want to raise money for. And we know that the board member has a close relationship with them. We are most definitely going to invite them into that ask. In fact, it probably wouldn't even be the fundraiser. It would probably be the friend. And so in that case, yes, they would get involved in that kind of activity. But to say they're in the mix every single day in there and looking to see and telling people what to do, and no, that's not what the board is there for. So
let me interrupt you for a second,
mhm.
Kristy. What is the difference between a CEO and the chairman of the board? Is the CEO under the chairman of the board?
Mhm.
Okay, they are. All right.
Yeah, it's their boss. It's basically his boss, his or her boss. Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So the hierarchy is the chairman of the board and then the CEO
Mhm.
and then the board members.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I think we already mentioned about compensation. Again, that's also very relative. You want to look at how much that person is bringing in. Um, and you want to look at any sudden jumps of, they were getting paid this much money, but then all of a sudden they got paid this much money. You want to look at why that happened. That really shouldn't be happening without a very good reason. Um, and yeah, high turnover on executive leadership and or executives. That's like we already mentioned that. So
Okay. Since we're running out of time, I'll ask you this, the last question. If you could give donors one non-negotiable rule for vetting a nonprofit before giving, what would it be? That one non-negotiable.
The non-negotiable, I would say, that is so key is making sure that the nonprofit's priorities actually match the stated mission. That's a non-negotiable.
And how can you see that? How can you, gauge that, Kristy?
Yes. Like I said before, you want to read what's across all their, their platforms, their social media, their website, the 990s, the annual report. Look at that, make sure. And if you're close enough and you want to get involved in that organization, please go and spend time in there and ask questions. I mean, when a person goes and volunteers at an organization, they should be able to ask any question that they want, pretty much. And, within reason, of course, and just, ask and, talk to people.
Who owns the nonprofit?
That's a good one. Well, who owns a nonprofit? In general, I mean, the in a way, the donors, the donors do. Without them, the organization wouldn't exist. And obviously, we want to keep that pipeline going, but God, they're so key. They're so key to what we do.
The donors are everything, because without it, you wouldn't be able to run the business. You wouldn't be able to run the nonprofits. You wouldn't be able to pay the salaries. You wouldn't be able to do the marketing. All of that, all of those expenses come from donor money. And that's the only place it comes from, correct?
Well, it depends. Some have a very nice portfolio of funding. The majority of it could come from donors, like you mentioned. Some of it can come from foundations or corporations or, in some cases, government money, depending on the organization. But, that's another thing to look at. Where is the majority of the money coming from? Yeah. So donors are a big deal.
So there's one thing that I've always looked at on the 990s, and I see very little nonprofits in the Catholic sphere is what I'm trying to say. And that is investment income. How important is I would think would be very important for nonprofits to have an investment portfolio, correct?
Well, they should definitely. It depends on what they're investing in and why. If we're going to get into what's the word I'm thinking about right now? I'm sorry, Christine, I'm blanking.
Kristy, my mind blanks 90% of the day, so you're fine. I'm throwing a lot at you.
But there should be definite investments to ensure that there is enough
stability.
Stability, reserves. Yeah. That's one of the things that I was going to say. Reserves. We definitely want to have enough reserves in case something happens, an economic downturn, etc.
So if they don't have investment income, would you say that would be a red flag or something that you might want to?
Yes and no. I mean, if it's a larger organization, they should be doing something. Smaller little startup organizations, I wouldn't be too concerned, like your local little dog rescue or cat rescue. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It depends.
What about a nonprofit that brings in maybe $5 to $8 million a year? Would you expect investment income for them? Or is that small potatoes in the nonprofit world?
It can be small potatoes. But again, how sophisticated is that organization? And who's leading that organization? That's a big key indicator too.
So what I get the sense of what you're telling us is, everybody, you got to look at the whole picture.
You do.
You can't just pick out certain things that might look good. You just have to look at the whole picture and do your due diligence by everything Kristy has said. Your 990s, look at their websites, look at their social media. Do they provide an annual report? All of those things. Are their mission? Is their mission and what they're saying to the public, does all of that match?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Did I condense that down?
You did it perfectly. Absolutely. And don't forget, if you have the opportunity, do volunteer.
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Do volunteer. That tells you a lot of information. And if you want to test the nonprofit to see how they treat you, go ahead, send in a little donation. And little, depends on the organization, right? How big is that organization? Little could be $10, $100, $500. Even $500 can be considered small potatoes, depending on the size of the organization. So see how they treat you. And just as a point of reference and kind of something very interesting that I've learned over, just my tenure is you never, ever, as a nonprofit, want to ignore those annual donors, because what has been found that those little donors that give, I don't know, $10 a month, $100 a month, and they've been giving for like 35, 40 years, are the very donors that may leave you in their estate planning. How interesting is that?
Right. That's a good point.
Super. So you definitely don't want to ignore. You definitely want to, treat your people, your donors right. Because they could be the very person that will leave you in their estate and they have like money like there's nobody's business, and they're going to take care of that nonprofit.
All right, Kristy, we're going to take a slight break, a 45-second break to let you have a drink of water, and we'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Christine Harrington with Eternal Life Plan guest, Kristy Armas. We'll be right back. All right, Kristy, here we are. Now, I would like for you to lead us in prayer. If you can lead us with a Hail Mary, and what intention should we pray for today?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That's such an honor. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I think there's a lot to pray for, Christine.
No.
Where should we start? Well,
Maybe
since
peace.
the topic is fundraising, let's do this. How about we lead a prayer in something fundraising related?
Okay. Our intentions are for fundraising and the nonprofits, the good nonprofits that help the world. I'll let you lead.
Okay, so specifically, I want to lead this prayer for our donors. Our donors.
Okay.
Our donors are so important, and they are people too, and they go through so much personally. I want to pray that whatever personal issues they're going through, physical, financial, spiritual, that our good Lord just, covers them and protects them and heals them and brings them peace beyond all understanding.
That's beautiful.
And with that, I will go ahead, and if it's okay with you, I'll say a Hail Mary in Latin. Would that be okay?
That'd be great.
Thank you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedictus tu mulieribus, benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Santa Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus nunc, et in hora mortis nostris. Amen. In nomine del Padre, Filii, et Spiritus Sancto.
Thank you, Kristy.
Thank you, Christine.
We don't have any questions.
Okay. They can ask later if they want.
You did such a good job, Kristy, that nobody has any questions because you answered their questions in their mind. And I just want to thank you for coming on. I really do. Especially, I know you're taking time from your Saturday to be here. And I just really, really appreciate that. I do.
Thank you. I really appreciate you asking me. It was such an honor to be with you. I've watched you both on your business side and on your spiritual side programs. I am just in love with everything that you're putting out there, and I appreciate all that you do and to enlighten us in both the business world and the spiritual world. Maybe we can talk about that at some future point.
Sure thing. I'd love to have you back, Kristy. So, everyone, you know how we end the program, and that is what? Eternal life is forever, right? Got a plan, and who is our plan? It's Jesus. I'll see you Monday night with Father Imbarado. Wednesday is Stephen O'Reilly. And now I can't remember what the following week is, Kristy, but
that's what happens.
Yeah.
God
bless you all.
Time really flies. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.